This is Ari Koretsky, and welcome to Jews You Should Know, introducing the broader community to interesting and inspiring Jewish men and women making a difference in our world. Some are already famous, some not yet so, but each is a Jew you should know.
We are back with another wonderful episode of Jews You Should Know, this week featuring children's author and illustrator Anne Koffsky. Anne has been working in the field for decades, has published many of her own books. In fact, she averages a book per year, and you will probably recognize some of her titles and her ubiquitous illustrations that grace many of those titles, as well as greeting cards and lots of other works of art that she has produced over the years. Anne is also at the forefront of a fascinating movement in which she is combating a fairly modern trend of not printing pictures of women in very religious publications, newspapers and magazines, and really trying to push back on that trend. It's certainly a subject of some controversy, and I think she makes a very compelling case for her viewpoint. And although my goal here is not to be controversial or to weigh in on politically sensitive issues, this is a part of her passion and her work, and it is an important issue to discuss and hear critical perspectives about. So we bring that as well. And again, Anne has been an outstanding author, illustrator in the children's book space, as well as now an editor in Biermann House, which is a very large publisher of Jewish-themed books, specifically in their Apple and Honey Press division. And I certainly learned a lot about that entire industry from Anne. A reminder again to subscribe wherever you are listening so that these episodes will come to you without you having to do anything at all. They'll just pop right in your podcast feed, and please tell others to do so as well. And share, rate on iTunes, or wherever else you might be listening. Please follow us on Instagram at Jews You Should Know, spelled out fully. Twitter, Jews You Should Know with a U instead of the Y-O-U. Facebook, Jews You Should Know. And at our website, JewsYouShouldKnow.com. And now to our conversation with children's author, illustrator, editor, publisher, Anne Koffsky. We are here with Anne Koffsky, an author, activist, and how are you, Anne?
I'm good. You left out illustrator.
An illustrator. I'm sorry. You know what it is? I'm so bad at illustrations myself that doesn't even cross my mind.
Well, somebody has to do them.
Sure. If you ever need a poorly rendered stick figure for any of your books, let me know.
Okay, I'll add you to the list of poorly rendered stick-figured people.
It's kind of humiliating when when your child surpasses your art abilities at the age of 3 or 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
It happened to me on math at around 4th grade with my kids.
There you go. So we all have, I guess, our limitations. So Anne, tell us a little bit about where you're from. What was your upbringing?
Well, I grew up in Lynbrook, Long Island. My dad was the rabbi at Beth David in Lynbrook for many years, for pretty much my whole childhood. And they sent me, to 10 minutes away, to the Hebrew Academy in Nassau County in West Hempstead. And then I went to Stern College, and then I made my way. I got married to a wonderful man, Mark Koffsky, and we lived in a bunch of places before we landed back in West Hempstead, which is where I am now. So I am a partial returnee.
Very nice. So what was it like growing up in Lynbrook? Not exactly a very religiously active area, as far as I know.
Right. So it was actually really interesting as a kid because I kind of had a schizophrenic existence, because the shul that my father was the rav of was, there was that moment in history where Orthodox rabbis went to be rabbis at conservative shuls, or shuls that didn't have mechitas, because I'm not sure it was officially a conservative shul. And so that he was in that moment. So I lived on Shabbos. I went to a conservative shul. But we were Shomer Shabbos, and I went to Hank, which was obviously a day school and a Shomer Shabbos place. So it was actually very broadening because I got to meet Jews from all sorts of, from not all backgrounds, but at least two of them. So I thought, I don't know if anybody would like to plan that as an ideal plan, but I think for me it was very good to see, Jews from all walks of life and have a deeper understanding of we're all Am Yisrael and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like what we would probably call today like conservadox.
We had the same davening. So, shuls today, the Reformed shuls today don't have the same davening. They changed some of the liturgy. So I grew up with the same davening, but people sat together. Yeah, if you took that shul and you put it in Alabama, they call it Orthodox. Right. At least at the time. Everything's changed now, however many years later. So
it's a more polarized, I would say, at this point in time. Those kinds of synagogues don't exist very much anymore. What were some of your memories of being the child of a longtime rabbi?
I had it pretty. I know some children of rabbis feel a lot of scrutiny. I really didn't have that. I think the only thing was that I had a bat mitzvah that a lot of people were looking at me. Then I felt under scrutiny. But on an everyday Shabbos and everyday life, I did get to crawl under the bima when I was little and sit on my father's lap on the bima. Because I did have certain privileges. Right. But I just thought that was okay and completely normal. I do remember with my younger brother thinking we were very small. I don't remember how old we were, but just walking into the shul saying, let's look at the Torahs, and opening the Aron and running in fear as the alarm went off.
They had an alarm already back then.
So I do think I had a sense of owner. I felt like, well, my dad's on the stage there, so the shul is mine. Right. I think that's what was different for me. But I didn't have any of the rough challenges that I've heard other rabbinical children sometimes have.
Right. And it's, again, interesting that you lived in Lynbrook, which is, more of an out of town. It's in New York, yes, but kind of not a major Jewish metropolitan experience.
So that was part of my schizophrenia also. I felt like I was out of town on Shabbos and in town during the week. So it was like two different types of existences. Like if I wanted to make a play date on Shabbos, nobody. My brothers and I hung out and played board games and did puzzles. But during the week, I'm in a day school that's very vibrant and lots and lots of Jewish kids. So
did you feel jealous of the kids who lived in, let's say, West Hempstead or the Five Towns?
I liked visiting. When my friends in West Hempstead would have me for Shabbos, it was like, oh, this is cool. But I don't know. I guess I must have felt some sort of jealousy because here I am back in West Hempstead. Right. Or I just liked it. And felt it was a good place to raise my kids.
Right. Yeah, it's a beautiful community there. Mm-hmm. So fast forwarding a little bit, you said you went to Stern College, as they say, and yes, you got married. What were your early career aspirations?
Well, my early career aspirations was that I worked at Scholastic Books when I was right out of college in textbooks. And I remember while I was at Scholastic, we would always get books from other publishers, and there would be a big grab pile, so that we all knew what was going on in the field. And I remember picking up a copy of Tuesday, which is this amazing book about frogs flying through a neighborhood. There's no words. The frogs come, and they fly through the neighborhood, and they watch television, and then they go back home. It's illustrated in the most magnificent watercolor style, and I looked at that and I said, I want to switch sides. I don't want to be at a publisher. I want to be the author, illustrator on the other side, creating cool frogs like that. So after a year or two at Scholastic, I went to the School of Visual Arts for a year, and then I printed a business card and started telling people I was an illustrator, and some of them believed me. And I started to
you make it, right?
And I started to illustrate stuff. I started with a lot of greeting cards, and then I was walking a trade show, the stationery show, and I met Schulsinger Judaica people, and they looked at my portfolio and said, "Oh, this is very nice. We hope to use you someday." And I looked at that. I'm like, they're never going to call me. They like my work, but they're never going to call me unless I tell them what to use me for.
Right.
So I wrote a little book for them, like a little board book. And I said, how about this? And they said, okay, make that. And I did three of those books and then 2 activity books for them. And that kind of started me in the book world.
Now, so just backing up a little bit, you said you started out at Scholastic, which I guess is a major publisher. Was it your plan all along to get into publishing and writing and in general? Like, did you know you wanted to go into the book or magazine publishing world?
Yes, I was very interested in media. Yes, printed art, things that use words and pictures.
What about that drew you?
If you looked at my notebooks from high school, the margins were filled with doodles, and art and communication with image has always been something that I find very compelling and very effective. And, it's like, why does anybody want to be anything? It's what they're good at. It's what they're compelled by. And it's, I think, how I can speak to people most effectively. And I want to do that.
So was art really your first love, or was it more the printed word? And were you always very artistic? Were you? I
was always very artistic, and I was always a good writer in school. Art was something that I was very driven by. Like, I think writing came pretty naturally to me, but art was something that I was just good enough that it intrigued me and challenged me, and then I had to work hard to get further along in it, which I loved. Like, I loved that that I was challenged and it drew me, and it was something that I could get better at and work on. So both of them, I like them both. They both work together beautifully. Like, as a high school kid, usually girls are not, now they are, but at that point, girls were not into comic books. I was a comic book geek. I collected DC comics, and I had little stacks, and I put them in plastic bags because that comic book was like, you are communicating with words and pictures, that you have both. So I think I find that even more compelling than like seeing a Rembrandt, which is really gorgeous. Rembrandt's very good at what he does, but that's a picture. Whereas a comic book is words and pictures and how you have them relate and tell a story.
What do you think about that is so powerful? In other words, you have purely visual art and then you have purely written word. What is it about the confluence of the two that is so compelling to you?
Oh, gosh. Well, you're taking 2 very powerful tools and using them both, 2 + 2 = 7, right? Because you have the picture on the page, the words become more powerful. You could have a picture that enhances the words. You could have a picture that contradicts the words. And then you have set up a dissonance. You're like, this person went for a walk in the park and had a great time. And then you show his face being miserable. And then you know that they are being sarcastic. And so you just can do more messages in different ways because you're using both.
Getting back to where you were, so you basically decided one day that you are an illustrator.
It's not like law school, because law school, they hand you a diploma, you get a hat, and you have a degree. To be an illustrator, I mean, you could go to a program and you graduate, but to be able to confidently say I am an artist is like a process, because am I really an artist? Am I just dabbling? Yeah, I got one job, but does that count? So yes, I printed the business card, and therefore I was an artist.
Therefore you were, I print, therefore I am.
Yes, exactly.
So you started getting some gigs illustrating, or?
Yes. So
what kind of things were you working on early on? Was it always in the Jewish world? Were you interested in
I was interested in everything, because when you're starting out, you are hungry. So if I got a job, I took it. But it started in a lot of the ways in the book, certainly, because I had an expertise in Judaism, because I was a Jewish Orthodox person who went to Stern, who went to Hank. I knew that subject matter very well. So a lot of my books are Jewish, most of them, 99% of them are. I also did a lot of greeting card work. Tell me
about that. What is that? That's like Hallmark cards? Like what
yes.
is that exactly?
So Hallmark, I did a bunch of Hanukkah cards for. But I did a Christmas bag for Costco, and I did a bunch of Santa Claus once in a while. Actually, I got a sock from my rabbi at the time. I don't even remember who I asked, so I apologize for that, but it was a long time ago. Yes, Santa Claus, no Jesus. in terms of illustrating. That was the line.
Interesting. The Jesus
Yeah,
one.
because Santa Claus was invented by Coca-Cola.
Right.
And Jesus was invented by somebody else.
Well, by God. Well, depends
Right.
who you ask.
Yes.
According to some, by nobody, okay.
Right. So that's where I had a conversation with Merov, and then personally, that's where I draw the line. I drew the line at the time, but now I'm mostly working on Jewish.
No pun intended. You never, you see these greeting cards and you don't really think about like who actually makes them, like many things in the world.
Right.
Or like the world itself.
If you look around, like the artists, art images are everywhere. So I said greeting cards and I said books, but like I designed some toys. I illustrated some puzzles. I did a placemat or two. I did oven mitts.
Wow.
For Right Light Judaica, there's some oven mitts with my illustrations on them. I designed a menorah. Everything needs to be, it doesn't just appear.
When it comes to the
In
greeting
the
cards,
Mishkan, they had to get Bezalel on the case,
when it comes to the greeting cards, did you think of the catchy phrases, or they would give you like the poem or whatever, and you say, okay, draw this?
I just created images, and they created the words.
Got it.
Yeah, and I sometimes never even saw the catchy phrases until the card was printed.
They're
like, we need a Hanukkah card. The art director at the greeting card company will call me up and say they need a Hanukkah card. I send them 4 sketches of different menorahs, 4 sketches of different dreidels, and then they say, we like this one, and then I make the final art for it, and then they print it on the card, and I find out much later what greeting they've chosen for it. Usually it's Happy Hanukkah. Very original.
Very creative.
Yes.
You could be walking through, you ever walk through a store and say, hey, I made that? Absolutely.
It's always fun.
That's
and I have my relatives call me and said, I bought a card and your name's on the back. Woo!
Oh, they actually do put your name on there.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's neat.
My 15 minutes of fame.
Do you ever get like a free batch of cards that you can then give out, or?
Always. I've got a whole Tupperware giant container full of greeting cards. I never have to buy a greeting card.
That's great. It comes in handy.
That's my huge perk.
That's really neat. So how did you then move from cards to books? As an illustrator, is it the kind of thing where is the epitome like to write your own book and illustrate your own book, or is it to collaborate with a major publishing house? What's like the goal there?
I don't think that those are completely, first of all, I did them simultaneously. I usually would have about a book, since I started, I had about a book a year. And then I had greeting card work to go around it at the time. Now I'm not freelancing as much as I used to. Now I'm an editor at Biermann House Publishers. I'm an editor and art director there. So I switched back. I've come full circle. I started at Scholastic, then I went to go freelance, and now I'm back in-house as on the other side of the table. So now I hire authors and illustrators for other books. In terms of the epitome, there's really no hierarchy like that. It's not, you can, if you want to measure in money, you want to measure in fame, you want to measure in, it's if you get to do work that you're proud of is the success.
Well, what was your dream? What was the ideal for you?
I personally love books. I love children's picture books. It is definitely, I like working on them as an author. I like working on them as an illustrator. I like working on them as an editor. I like working on them as an art director. It's so meaningful. Like a greeting card is nice, but somebody gets it and usually they throw it out. A picture book is something you read over and over to your child. They become beloved. They stay on the shelf. They get passed down to grandchildren if you really liked it. Right. Or they get read so many times that they get in the garbage eventually. But they have staying power and they tell a story. A greeting card is a pretty picture. A picture book tells a story. And a story, everything's made of stories. We're all made of stories, right? The Torah, go look at Bereshit. It's story, 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 story. That's how we connect to the next generation. They don't remember, well, they do remember, go wash your hands, go do this, go do these mitzvos. But if you connect it and hook it to a story, that's the meaning.
Yeah. What were some of the early projects that you got to work on once you sort of became an actual illustrator, once you started getting real gigs? You said you've been doing a book a year, which is quite a lot.
Yes, I'm proud of that.
You've been working in the field for a while. So what were some of the things that you worked on?
It depends how, I think the very first project was those little Schulsinger books I told you about, which was, one was a little board book. I I can light the candles. I can make kiddush. I can light a menorah. I can spin a dreidel. That's the whole book. I can go through all the holidays and done. So those were the early books. In the summers, I would work at my kids' camp so that we would barter camp for work. A lot of people do that. And I was a lifeguard, nothing to do with writing or illustrating. But I did that for 10 summers. I was a lifeguard, got a really good tan every summer. And that inspired me writing a book called Noah's Swimathon. So that was one of the first books that really was a picture book classically, not like a board book or not like a textbook, or this was a picture book with a story. The boy called Noah, who was scared to swim, and he ends up overcoming his fear of swimming because he wants to be in the camp swimathon. So it's a book about tzedakah and being brave, and because I was a lifeguard for 10 years, I knew the pool. They always say, write what you know. So that was a very significant book for me because it was my first picture book. That was a story, 32 pages, and that kind of format.
Now, what's the process? In other words, in these situations, you were not writing the books, right? So
no, that I did write the book.
You wrote these that you described. You actually wrote the content as well.
Right. I really started writing quite a lot because I started with those little board books and that worked. So I did it again and I did it again and I did it again. So I did write and illustrate many, many books. But the process is you write the story, you send it to the publisher. Usually they reject it. Occasionally they accept it. And if they do, I'm the author illustrator. So they're usually contacting me with some kind of, we see that you illustrate. We'll have you illustrate this as well.
Interesting. So you don't come in as a package deal saying, here's a completed work with
because the publisher has a lot of feedback for you. They have, this is a great story. Now here are 120 changes. We love it, but change everything.
Interesting.
So that's definitely part of the process, and that happens in the art stage as well. We really like how you drew Noah, but can you make him a redhead and add freckles and talk to us about how you're going to do his elbow joints? I mean, there's so many visual decisions to make.
Interesting. So do you ever start the other way and come with an illustration concept? Because I would imagine that if so much of the power of the book is the illustration, how does a publisher really even envision what you have in mind? I mean, a story could just be, a pretty, like, for example, you said, I can light the menorah, I can make kiddush. Well, I mean, that's not a very riveting plot. So if you would come just to the publisher and say, this is my vision for a book. I can do this, done. I mean,
right.
So isn't the illustration a big part of that? And wouldn't they have to know that you're qualified to do that, or believe in your iteration of the visualization in order to task you with the full project?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Normally what would happen is that I would show them my portfolio samples. So I could say, yes, this is the story, and I plan to use this artistic style to illustrate it. However, and that's how it often works, I would say 99% of books, story is written, art happens later, based on portfolio samples. But my most recent book called Creation Colors, which retells the story of Bracious through color and through paper cuts. So like we're telling the story of Bracious, we say on day 1, Hashem created black and white. On day 2, God created blue. On day 3, God created green. Okay, so it actually works. And I made it work. For that book, I wrote up the story and I sent it to an editor that I work with, who I actually happen to share an office with because she's at Biermann House too. I said, what do you think? And she said, there's nothing there. And I had in my head, gorgeous art, amazing art, but she couldn't see it because it didn't exist yet. And I said, you know what? I don't care. I am making this art. And if she doesn't take it, I'll donate it to a shul. And I made 7 days of creation and I showed her the art and she said, oh, this is a book. And now it's a book. Wow. And the art is in here. Oh, we're doing a whole callback, a full circle. The art is now hanging in the Hebrew Academy in Nassau County Minion Room.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
So it's really nice that it gets to have lives in different places.
Tell me a little bit about how your career evolved from doing these different books. Was there a diversity of things happening? Did you Did you venture into different types of art? Did you ever collaborate with different people and so forth?
Oh, well, there's a lot, every project has its own story. So the Noah Swimathon, I mean, I could talk to you artistically, like the Noah Swimathon picture book, I decided to just, my style for painting involves color paint with black outline and colored pencil. When I got to Noah Swimathon, I said, you know what, let's try having less of our cartoony look and drop the black outline. When I did the creation colors book, artistically, I always did, my artistic style basically had been split. I guess schizophrenia is like a feature of my personality. But
sounds like it has its early origins.
So for my picture books and my book illustration, I had most often been used to painting. For my greeting card work, I had most often used paper cuts. For creation colors, I put them together. So there's paper cuts laid over paintings.
Wow.
So, so artistically, you always have to be pushing yourself and trying new things. Otherwise, one, you're going to get bored. You yourself will get bored. And two, you become a hack because you just do the same thing over and over and over. The nature of a creative career is continual innovation. So if you look at each book of mine, you're like, oh, in that one she did that, and in this one she did this, and that kind of thing.
How do you know? Like, how do you learn all these different techniques? I mean, each one of these are different. Now, so do you have to train yourself in the different techniques, or once you're good at one, you're kind of decent in all the others?
No, everything, but that's part of being innovative is learning. I want to try that. I wonder what glue you need. If I want to put these paper cuts on top of the paintings, how am I going to get it to stick? I got to find that out. So I don't know that because I'm an artist. I have to go look and, start Googling decoupage techniques and, what's archival glue that will last and not fall apart. And you gotta learn. So the first one, you make mistakes. And the second one, you still make mistakes. And then you gradually get a feel for how you approach something, just like anything else. I think that's true of any field, right?
Yeah.
You learn, the field evolves, you have to keep learning. And you evolve and you keep learning.
At some point, it sounds like you transitioned, as you said, from, I guess, producing your own materials or freelancing to being an in-house manager, professional, an organizational person.
Right.
How did that happen? Why did you make that choice? Was it just for stability? Because it's very different managing people and sort of directing others as opposed to the creative person yourself.
Yes, it's certainly a different role. The reason I switched is I think like a lot of women, my kids got big and they were, when freelance was amazing for being at home because I was home. I'm a babysitter so that I could actually paint without them sticking their hands in the stuff. But, I made my own hours and I could drive carpool whenever I needed to. And I was there to make dinner and I was there when they came home or I was there, whatever. But then they grew. And my youngest, all of a sudden, was going until 4 o'clock. And then in a yeshiva, they get to 7th grade and they go all the way to forever o'clock. So I just wanted more. And I had the time to do that. And there's also a lot of value into switching to be a collaborator because now I get to work with other people, see, first of all, it's a lot less lonely. But you learn, like, I love working with artists and talking to them about how we're going to hash out a book because, and then my own art becomes better because I'm like, oh, look what they did. I'm stealing that. I mean, I'm being inspired by that next time. That was me joking. But yes, we all learn from one another. And so I'm really excited to switch sides and be a collaborator. And because I was a freelancer for all those years, now I know how to work with freelancers because I can relate to them and say, okay, this is what we're doing. You got to fix the head and do the nose and move that around and you have to flop your composition. And they're like, oh yeah, thanks. Because I can get in their heads because I did it too. And I do it.
Or do you think that you bring unique sensitivities as well to the table? In other words, I would imagine part of the tension of a freelancer and a publisher would be that the freelancer has certain creativity and a vision, and then it's constantly being modified and changed by whoever is paying them to do it.
Yes.
And that could probably be a difficult pill to swallow for creative people. do you bring that sensitivity to the table, and how would you navigate that?
No, absolutely. And although I think people who are not ever freelancers have that sensitivity too. If you work with professionals, first of all, they know changes are coming. Nobody is perfect the first time. We work at Biermann House. I've worked with Eric Kimmel and David Adler and Barbara Diamond Golden. And if you know picture books, those are the top Jewish writers. They're also not perfect the first time. I don't think they'll mind me revealing that. We have edits for them. They do, and they're really good at what they do. But you always need an objective eye, and you need somebody else who can help you get to the strongest way that it could be. But sure, I think if you're working with a professional and a creative person, they also want to do their best work. So if you say, change their hair to red, and you don't explain yourself, they're like, what the heck? Why do I have to change the hair to red? But if you say, please change their hair to red, because the kid is going to be in the forest for the whole book, and red contrasts with green really well, and we think that it will help highlight the kid, they'll be like, oh, thanks. Now my pictures just got that much better because you gave me this tip that I didn't see because I've been in there drawing his eyelashes and I couldn't see the forest for the trees. So that's like what an editor does a lot. We're looking from the helicopter up here and saying, hey, I see you missed that corner. And they're like, oh, I didn't realize that because I was over there in the other corner. So it's a collaboration. It really is a true collaboration.
What does Biermann House principally work on?
Biermann House is, I believe, the oldest Jewish publisher in the United States. It's been here, 100, I think we're celebrating our centennial soon, which is kind of remarkable. And they primarily provide Jewish educational books to Hebrew schools, congregational schools, I think they call them now. But for conservative and reform. And they also now have an imprint called Apples and Honey Press, where they do Jewish children's books, which is a great name, right?
I love it.
Yes. So Apples and Honey Press has, Yom Kippur Shortstop from David Adler, and Big Sam from Eric Kimmel, and Judah Maccabee Goes to the Doctor by me. And it's really, for such a young imprint, it's like 5 years old. It's got an amazing, I'm very, very proud to be a part of it. We really built something really cool.
That's great.
A lot of those books cross over. Picture books especially, Shabbos is Shabbos when you're talking to a 3-year-old. We light candles, we eat challah, and we bless the kids Friday night. And that crosses Reform, Conservative, Orthodox.
Right.
Which is really, really nice.
Right. What's being emphasized nowadays in the, as you said, the congregational school world? These are, I guess, textbooks for them?
Educational materials, sometimes textbooks, sometimes a booklet, sometimes a poster, sometimes just anything that has content that an educator in that environment would find useful.
It's interesting.
Books.
Yeah, it's interesting because I would imagine, I guess, then you have somewhat of a bird's eye view on that demographic in that world. It's a much maligned arena. And, I work with college students in my day job, so to speak. And I have to acknowledge that many, if not most of them, come with less than favorable judgments about their Hebrew school experiences. So I'm curious what...
First of all, I think if you survey day school students, you would get a lot of that as well.
That could be.
Growing up is hard. So there's a lot of people that don't enjoy the process at some point or the other.
Fair enough. I think there's something particularly hellish about Hebrew school for many people,
I think what's hard about Hebrew school is that they have to give up soccer for it.
Right.
I think they're competing with soccer. When you send your kid to a day school, that's their world, that's their environment, and they don't see their friends doing other fun things while they're in Chumash. But when you go to a Hebrew school, your friends are going to soccer or dance or having other opportunities, and you're stuck going to another school? That's really hard. That's not fair. Why do they get to go play baseball and I have to go to a second school? Yeah. So I think that's like the core issue that all the Hebrew schools have to contend with. And I noticed that a lot of the religious schools are working very hard about how to make Hebrew school engaging and fun and connecting to the kids. They're not just sitting there anymore. They're using the books as a jumping off point to have out of the seat activities and group work and camp-like experiences in the Hebrew schools. I don't know, they'll bake something, or they'll all get together and do a soup kitchen project. So they're trying, and they'll use the content within as a part of that. So everybody wants to make this work, is what I've noticed. And
right. So I was going to ask you then, from your vantage point, what are you seeing? Are there innovations that you're seeing in that world, and what kind of materials are being produced to help create a more informal educational feel and a more engaging connection?
Yeah, so the Biermann House school materials now all have what we call out-of-the-seat activities. It's not a textbook saying, once upon a time the Jews were kicked out of this country and now we have a holiday. It's everybody get out of your seat. There's a lot of project-based learning ideas where the kids think about what they want to learn, and then they have to go research based on what questions they have. So there's a lot of that I see. There's a lot of mindfulness activities that we're now putting into our books. So, not just everybody make a blessing and eat an apple. It's hold the apple in front of you, look at it, smell it, now say the blessing. So there's mindfulness moments and stuff like that are now incorporated into a lot of materials as well. There's also a lot of trends towards, yes, they're teaching holidays and history and Chumash, but they're also teaching about kindness. Biermann House just did a whole curriculum called Let's Discover Kindness, which is all about how to teach kindness ideas and basically chesed. It's a program about chesed for kids in second grade. How can we be kind to ourselves? How can we be kind to our friends? How can we be kind to our teachers? And all those types of activity about chesed. I'm trying to think what other trends there are. Yeah, the same thing, building character. So we're working on a program now about character traits. Let's talk about gvura. How can I be brave and strong? And what Jewish heroes can I look to be inspired about bravery and strength? Like, let's talk about Esther through the lens of character. What did she have that let her go into Achashverosh's throne room and risk her life? Like, how did she build that within herself? What can I learn from that personally? So I think that it's really focusing on character and midot is a huge trend, because people aren't nice in our world right now. Everybody's mad at each other. So there's a desire to teach our kids differently.
How is all of this changing in today's digital world? Print media, you're constantly hearing the death knells of print media. How is this all impacting your work? Both as an individual creator, illustrator, author, etc., and as an editor, on the management side of this profession.
So I think what's changing is that when we're writing activities for these textbooks, we all know kids have a phone in their pocket or can get one, or certainly the teacher does. So that's a great challenge because we're competing with it, but it's also a great opportunity. So for example, we just did a textbook called Israel, It's Complicated, which is really, if you're teaching college kids on campus, you know how important that is. So in that last chapter of Israel, It's Complicated, we have this great, tourist, basically the last chapter of the book is, these are all the cool things you can see in Israel, which there are many. And what we did is we have a photo, let's say of Masada, and we printed a QR code. So the kid can see the picture of Masada, do whatever activity we have on the page, pull out their phone and click on the QR code, which takes them to Masada's website. And then we can ask them questions in the book that they have to find on Masada's website. So that's tremendous opportunity because they could get lost on Masada's website and learn way more than we could put in a 72-page book. And we could have 10 QR codes on a page, which I think we did about 5. And then you turn the page and there's 5 more. So it's opportunity and it's challenge. Biermann House is doing a lot of digital work. They've got games, digital game, like let's say for their Hebrew, they're teaching the kids Hebrew, then they have games digitally that you can go practice your Hebrew. And you can record yourself saying the words, and then the teacher gets an email with the recording so they know where they're doing. So there's like so many opportunities.
But they are still requesting the print materials in the schools and so forth.
Yes. Biermann House is healthy and vibrant. People want, they don't necessarily want books, because sometimes they want to be so fun that they don't want to hand the kids a book. They're concerned that maybe a book will make them feel like it's school. But if we break it into folders that are stapled together, then suddenly it's not a book. And then they can hand it out, and it's disposable in a way that book isn't. And they get to bring it home, and they get to write in it without worrying. So, and then that content is delivered in just a different way. So right. I think we're all just figuring out different content delivery, but Judaism is still something people like, and they want to teach it, and they want to pass it to their kids in a way that's engaging.
Definitely heartening to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just touch on another facet of what you do, and this is a more delicate topic, but you're involved in, I believe, an online initiative to highlight women in social media as perhaps a reaction to let's say a more conservative trend within some segments of the religious community
mm-hmm.
that are either obscuring or removing images of women from popular media, popular publications, I guess in the name of modesty, so to speak. And obviously it's a controversial subject with a lot of emotional feelings about it on different sides of the issue. And without getting too political or too controversial, so to speak, but just tell me a little bit about what you're doing and kind of what you're passionate about. And really, I guess more in the positive sense, what you're promoting to highlight what you believe is important.
Thank you. Okay, so yes, I am very passionate. Look, we just spent, how long have we been talking? 30 minutes, 40 minutes so far, about the power of image and how it is so valuable to communicate with image and words to send a message, to tell a story, to advertise, whatever it is, that message that you're trying to communicate. Image and words working together are an incredible, valuable tool. So because one of the things that I want to communicate to my daughter and to my sons, and I think other Jewish women want to communicate to their daughters and their sons, is a sense of what true tznius is a sense of what role models are, women to look up to. Sometimes I want to communicate by my book. That's what I want to do sometimes. Sometimes a real estate agent who is female wants to get business. Sometimes there's a female speaker who wants to say, hey, I'm speaking about a Dvar Torah at this shul. And all of those messages, some very important, like showing our daughters what true tznius look like. Some more parnasa related, like please hire me to sell your house, are more effectively communicated with image. And without so that's the positive end. If we want to really teach our daughters, sons, and people what true Judaism looks like, which we do, because otherwise all they get to see is anorexic newscasters and superheroes who have lots of muscles and high heels for some reason. If we want to show what real tznius is and what real women we look up to, and if we want to show what we value, pictures is a tremendous way to do it. To just eliminate them in the name of tznius. First of all, I question the premise, because Sarah Schneera and Rebbitzin Feinstein and Rebbitzin Kamenetsky were all quite tznius and appeared in pictures.
Sure.
And if you go to my website that I'm the webmaster for, called FromWomenHaveFaces.com, you can see lots of photos of them, because nobody did this until 1999 or something. This is a new idea, it is a new concept, and I think it wasn't thought through. When we take out pictures of women, we are throwing the baby and many other things out with the bathwater. And I think the unintended consequences were not thought through.
What are you doing in your social media campaign to reverse that?
Well, I'm part of there's a lot of different things we're doing. I'm part of a larger group of women. There's a Facebook group called Put the Women Back In from media, which is a long title, but that's what it is on Facebook. And I'm not the moderator of that, but I am a part of it. And there's about 800 women in there right now, all Shomer Shabbos from, and many, many Yeshivish Haredi people in there as well, which people don't realize. There are a lot of Yeshivish Haredi people who don't like this either. And together we've written hundreds of letters. We've basically had an extended letter writing campaign and just general advocacy saying, hi, I don't know if you realize, but when you show two men at the Shabbos table without the bomb, you're communicating that women don't matter and don't exist. And that is a troubling message. So on there, it's just an advocacy letter writing campaign. I'm also the webmaster of that website, which I just mentioned a minute ago. And in that capacity, that's an educational website. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who have a misunderstanding that I've spoken to, who think it's halacha, or who think it's minhag, or who think it's always been this way in Haredi communities. This is the way life has always been. So the website is mostly educational, showing the pictures from the Jewish Observer, which is a good publication until the mid-90s, that had women on the cover even, showing photos of these great Rebbitzins so they don't disappear. Otherwise we're going to lose them. It's very sad to me.
Are you hopeful?
I am hopeful in the long term because I have emunah. And that's how I'm hopeful in the long term. I have no evidence to be hopeful, but my emunah says that Hashem will make sure that our true tradition is maintained and that the incorrect traditions will fall away. It was invented after the iPod. So anything invented after the iPod has to prove that it's a good idea. And the pushback, and I actually am starting to have hope because I'm not alone. 800 women being upset is significant. I don't think a practice can continue that upsets this many people.
What responses do you get from publishers when you reach out about
the editor? I don't want to name any names, but I've spoken to editors of several publications, and none of them like it.
The female editors or the male editors?
I've spoken to male editors.
Many of the main editors of some of these publications are actually female.
Yes, they are. But I have spoken to, I'm trying to figure out how to say this without, none of them that I have spoken to, I'm trying to think how to say it without identifying them because they didn't say I could say their words publicly. The ones that I have spoken to are not happy about it. They feel like they have to do it for business concerns.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard before, that there's a growing conservatism, let's call it, that is driving a commercial choice, and
unfortunately, again, even when you make that decision, you're not thinking it through because you're making first of all, I'm not sure how carefully the data has been recorded and how many people just don't care.
Right.
How many people would stop getting the publication, how people would now start buying the publication if you just put the women back in. So I'm not sure what their data is or they're basing it on a gut feeling or if they're basing it on fear. Secondly, so if Parnassa is what we care about in this issue, then that needs to be evaluated from all sides. But you've just hit a bunch of women who now can't make Parnassa because they can't advertise their business properly. Right. So I find it very upsetting. I find it concerning that there seems to be a lot of fear around this issue, that people can't choose to do what they think is right without fear of consequences. Because we should not make our ethical choices based on terror.
Right. In closing, and switching back to your main job, what's on the horizon for you? What's unaccomplished yet for you? Do you have any exciting book ideas that you still want to work on in terms of your own? Do you see any major projects on the editing side coming down the pike that are energizing you? What are you up to next?
What am I excited about next?
Yeah.
Well, I am very excited. My own book that I'm working on with my editor right now is called Kayla and Kugel's Hanukkah, tentatively titled. So I have two books called, the first one's called Kayla and Kugel, which is about a girl and her dog getting ready for Shabbat, or Shabbos, depending who we're talking to. The second book is called Kayla and Kugel's Almost Perfect Pesach, because Kugel, the dog, steals the afikomen, and chaos ensues. And now we're doing a Hanukkah one. So what's exciting about that is I've got a series here. We've got a character that people are connecting to. And, when I grew up, it was Sammy the Spider making holidays. And now for a whole other generation of kids, I think there's going to be Kayla and Google. So that's kind of cool.
That's great. That's really great. So this is really on the freelance side, so to speak.
That's on my other hat. Yeah. I wear lots of hats for lots of reasons.
Now, because you're a publisher as well, or working for a publisher, do you have more ready access to just kind of greenlight your own projects, or do you publish through other?
I wish. I have access in that I'm in the office with my friend Dina, who's the executive editor. And if I send her something, she is committed to reading it. However, I assure you, she has had no problem rejecting me over and over and over. I think I've got a 5-to-1 ratio.
Wow.
I'm not exaggerating, but I think that that's very common. I don't think I'm bad at this. I think it's really, really hard to write a successful, effective book for children. It's deceptively simple. You think it's so easy. It's only 32 pages. It's got a sentence on a page. But if you only have 32 pages and 5 words on a page, every word has to be perfect because that's all you got. So though you have to choose every word so carefully and every brushstroke so carefully to really communicate that image. So I get rejected all the time. I'm very proud of it because that's the process. That's the way it works.
Well, it's definitely an inspiring thought for anyone who's trying to create anything or accomplish anything big, that that's an inherent part of the process, not a sidebar or an unfortunate, distraction, but that really is the process itself. And if you're not getting rejected, you're not getting...
If you're not getting rejected, you're not trying. If they took you on the first time, something's wrong. Why did they think you were so perfect the very first time you wrote something? Maybe you're a prodigy, but I doubt it.
Reminds me of the Groucho Marx, any club that wants me as a member, I don't want to be a part of.
Right. Well, that's not true, though. You definitely want to get published.
You want to get published, but eventually you want to prove that it's really of value.
Genuine. And again, Dina accepted. I'm very grateful, and she is excited also about Kayla and Kugel Hanukkah. She just sent me pages of edits. I got to fix this. I got to fix that. I got to work on the balance between the story of Hanukkah and the story of Kayla and Kugel. And there's plenty to do. I got work to do.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to seeing
it. When we're done, it's going to be great.
We'll look forward to seeing it. Tell us, Anne, in closing, where people can find your work. Where can they want to, buy some of these books? Or
yes. So let's do everybody ready? Here comes all the websites and Instagram stuff. Okay. You can follow me on Instagram at Jewish Art by Anne. You can find my website at annekoffsky.com, 2 F's, 1 S. You can find Biermann House books at biermannhouse.com, BEHRMAN house.com. You can find Biermann House's picture books at www.applesandhoneypress.com. And finally, FromWomenHaveFaces.com if you want to see pictures of Rebbetzin Feinstein, Rebbetzin Kamenetsky, and other amazing women. Plus, I got a page of jokes.
Okay, well, if nothing else brings them, it'll be the jokes.
There you go.
You got to have a sense of humor, even around a serious and sensitive topic. So
absolutely, and that's how we're Jewish, right? That's how we affect change through humor.
There we go. Anne Koffsky, author, illustrator, activist. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This has really been an honor.
This has been Ari Koretsky on Jews You Should Know. Please visit us at JewsYouShouldKnow.com and subscribe at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you consume podcasts. Find us on social media at Jews You Should Know. If you'd like to become a supporter of this podcast, we would greatly appreciate that, and you can do so by visiting patreon.com. That's patreon.com/JewsYouShouldKnow. Finally, if you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review so that we can continue to grow and introduce many more people to Jews You Should Know.